The departures don't look dramatic. No headlines, no chaos, just quiet movement at unusual hours. Between 2 and 5 a.m., when the city feels paused, private jets line up with unusual precision. Engines start, doors close, and within minutes they're gone. No announcements, no attention, but the pattern repeats. Late 2023, early 2024, into 2025, flight tracking analysts began noticing clusters, short bursts of outbound private flights tied to key financial periods. Wealth managers didn't call it an exodus. They called it rebalancing. But the language matters less than the timing, because it didn't happen when things looked bad. It happened while everything still looked perfect. Luxury towers still selling, tourism numbers still climbing, headlines still confident, which makes the movement harder to explain. Why leave when nothing appears broken? Why shift assets when returns still look strong on paper? And more importantly, why do it quietly? Because when the ultra-rich move, they don't wait for confirmation. They move on signals, early signals, signals most people never see. And if those signals are real, then what they're reacting to hasn't reached the surface yet. So the question isn't whether Dubai is thriving today. It clearly is. The real question is, what are they seeing that the rest of the world hasn't noticed yet? It began with belief, not just in buildings, but in a system. Dubai offered something rare in the early 2020s: speed, flexibility, and clarity, low taxes, minimal friction, a place where capital could arrive and operate almost immediately. After 2020, that promise became even stronger. Our global instability pushed wealth towards certainty, and Dubai positioned itself as that certainty. In 2022, global migration reports estimated over 5,000 millionaires relocated to the UAE. By 2023, projections approached 7,000. Luxury property transactions surged. Deals above $10 million became common. Entire neighborhoods transformed almost overnight. The narrative reinforced itself: growth attracting more growth, visibility attracting more capital. It wasn't just a market. It felt like a safe zone. Investors trusted it because it worked. Fast approvals, strong infrastructure, a lifestyle that matched the image. Everything aligned. And when everything aligns, belief becomes stronger than data, because success becomes expected. But systems built on rapid success carry something beneath them: a dependency on continued inflow, on constant momentum. And when momentum is required, even small changes begin to matter more than they should. The shift didn't announce itself. It never does. It started with tone, subtle changes in how wealth advisors spoke. Late 2023, early 2024. Recommendations became more cautious, not negative, just measured. Diversify exposure. Avoid concentration. Quiet phrases, but consistent. At the same time, policy signals began to evolve. In 2023, the UAE introduced a 9% corporate tax, modest compared to global standards, but meaningful in direction, because it marked alignment with global frameworks, not abandonment of advantages, but adjustment. Then came external pressure: global transparency standards tightening, cross-border financial reporting increasing, wealth structures becoming more visible. None of this broke the system, but it changed how it was evaluated, and evaluation drives behavior. Flight data began showing increased outbound movement during key financial quarters, not mass departures, strategic exits, timed, controlled, and most importantly, quiet. Because wealth doesn't react loudly, it reacts early, and when multiple small signals align, policy, regulation, global trends, they don't create panic. They create repositioning, which is harder to see, but far more important. The data builds slowly, but once you see it, it's difficult to ignore. Dubai remained a top destination for wealth inflows through 2022 and much of 2023. But by late 2024, patterns began to stabilize, and in certain segments, reverse. High-end property transactions above $10 million showed fluctuations instead of consistent growth, not collapse, but inconsistency. And rental yields faced pressure in oversupplied luxury zones. Meanwhile, cost of living rose sharply. Between 2022 and 2025, prime residential rents increased by 30% to 45% in key districts. School fees followed. Service costs adjusted. Energy consumption climbed alongside rising temperatures, with cooling accounting for nearly 70% of electricity demand during peak months. At the same time, global interest rates remained elevated through 2024. tightening liquidity across markets. Capital became selective. Returns were compared more aggressively across cities, and when comparisons increase, advantages shrink. None of these numbers suggest failure, but together, they shift the balance. Because wealth doesn't wait for decline. It moves when margins compress, quietly, gradually, before the shift becomes visible. To understand why this matters, you have to understand the system itself. Dubai operates on flow, continuous inflow of capital, people, and resources. Real estate drives perception, tourism drives liquidity, financial services drive integration, and all three depend on confidence. The model is efficient, but tightly connected. If one part slows, others adjust, and the financial structure reinforces this. Growth funds infrastructure. Infrastructure supports growth. A loop. But loops require momentum, and momentum requires belief. The introduction of corporate tax in 2023 signaled long-term alignment with global standards, necessary but transformative, because it changed how multinational wealth structures assessed long-term positioning. Add increasing global financial transparency requirements, and suddenly the flexibility that once defined the system becomes more standardized. Again, not a weakness, but a shift. And systems built on specific advantages react strongly when those advantages evolve, especially when alternatives exist. Wealth doesn't need one location, it needs the best combination. And when combinations change, positioning changes with them. The breakdown isn't visible in a single moment, it's visible in patterns. Private banking divisions across Europe and Asia reported increased account transfers linked to clients previously concentrated in the UAE, not withdrawals, reallocations, diversification across multiple jurisdictions. At the same time, certain luxury developments experienced slower absorption rates. Projects that once sold out within days now required extended marketing cycles. Developers adjusted. Flexible payment plans, incentives, extended timelines. These are not signs of collapse. They are signs of recalibration. But recalibration changes perception, and perception drives markets. Once investors feel that growth is no longer automatic, behavior shifts. They pause, they compare, and in fast-moving economies, even a pause has consequences. Because momentum is fragile, it depends on constant reinforcement, and once it softens, even slightly, rebuilding it requires more effort than maintaining it ever did. The impact moves through people, quietly. At the top, wealth reallocates. At the middle, professionals adjust. At the base, workers absorb the change. Real estate agents notice fewer ultra-high-value inquiries. Luxury retailers track shifts in spending patterns. Service industries adjust staffing based on demand cycles. For residents, the shift feels different. Rent increases, utility costs rise, lifestyle remains high, but the balance changes. For many, the question becomes practical. Is the cost justified by the opportunity? For workers, especially those tied to construction and services, employment stability links directly to development cycles. When projects slow, income becomes uncertain. Families begin making decisions, not dramatic exits, quiet considerations, stay or move. And that's the pattern repeating at every level. Different scale, same behavior, movement, adjustment, repositioning. Because systems don't just change through data, they change through decisions. Individual decisions that, over time, reshape the entire structure. There are deeper layers beneath the surface. Cost of living is one. Between 2021 and 2025, Dubai climbed global rankings for expensive cities, especially in housing and education. Then there's climate. Not just heat, but sustainability. Summers exceeding 45 degrees Celsius are not new, but their duration and intensity are increasing. Cooling demand rises. Infrastructure pressure builds. Desalination remains the primary water source. Energy-intensive, constant, essential. Environmental feedback loops, like rising coastal temperatures increasing humidity, make conditions harder over time. Then there's population structure. A large portion of the workforce is temporary, mobile. If conditions become less favorable, they leave, which creates labor shifts, which impacts development timelines, which affects growth. Each layer connects. Cost, climate, population, none of them collapse the system, but together, they apply pressure. Now it's continuous pressure, the kind that doesn't break systems immediately, but slowly changes how they function. Zoom out, and the pattern becomes clearer. Dubai is not isolated. Global wealth is moving. In 2024 and 2025, reports highlighted a growing trend among ultra-high net worth individuals: multi-location residency. Not one base, but several. London, Singapore, New York, Dubai. Diversification not just of assets, but of geography. Because the modern strategy is flexibility, reduce exposure, increase options, and that changes how cities compete. It's no longer about attracting wealth once, it's about retaining it continuously. Under changing global conditions, Dubai built its rise on offering something unique: speed, access, advantage. But as global systems align, uniqueness becomes harder to maintain. And when uniqueness narrows, decisions shift, not dramatically, strategically, across multiple cities, across multiple systems. Which means what's happening here is not a collapse, it's part of a broader transformation, one that is reshaping how wealth interacts with cities everywhere. The realization comes quietly, not in headlines, not in sudden events, but in patterns. Dubai is still functioning, still growing, still impressive, but beneath that, something is changing. The assumption of constant, effortless growth is being tested. The idea that one city can offer everything indefinitely is being reconsidered, and the people most sensitive to that shift are the ones with the most flexibility, the ultra-rich. They don't wait for confirmation. They move on probability, on signals, on early indicators. And when they move, they don't announce it. They adjust, quietly, strategically, which makes it easy to miss, until the pattern becomes too large to ignore. And by then, the movement is already complete. So now the question becomes unavoidable, not whether Dubai is failing, but whether the system that built it is beginning to change. Because if the people with the most information, the most access, the most resources, are quietly reducing their exposure, what does that suggest about what comes next? And more importantly, how early are we in that shift? Share what you think, because this isn't a story with a clear ending. Not yet. And if you want to follow how these patterns unfold, slowly, quietly, before they become obvious, then stay connected, subscribe to channel. Because the biggest changes don't arrive with noise, they arrive in silence.